It was 2:10 in the morning when my phone buzzed beside my bed. I almost ignored it, but the message preview froze me mid-blink. Suspicious activity detected near 1462 Maplewood Drive. That was my neighbor's house. I didn't know it then, but that message would change how I saw my entire neighborhood forever. If you're into chilling neighborhood mysteries like this, make sure to subscribe because what I found the next morning still keeps me up at night. My name's Jake Miller. I'm 34, and I've lived on Maplewood Drive for almost a decade now. It's the kind of neighborhood where nothing ever really happens, where the biggest excitement is a lost cat flyer on a mailbox or a new coat of paint on someone's fence. I joined our local neighborhood watch 2 years ago, mostly out of boredom and curiosity. It made me feel useful, part of something bigger, like I was helping keep our little slice of suburbia safe. My neighbor, Tom Harris, lived right next door. Average guy, quiet, always mowing his lawn on Saturdays with his earbuds in. He worked long hours as an HVAC technician and mostly kept to himself. He wasn't the type you'd expect to see out in the middle of the night with a shovel in his hands. But that's exactly what I saw when I pulled my blinds aside that night. The glow from the streetlight barely reached the back of his yard, but I could see his silhouette, digging slowly, rhythmically, as if every motion had been planned. The faint scrape of metal against dirt carried through the cold November air. Every sound felt too loud for a neighborhood that was supposed to be asleep. For a moment, I told myself I was imagining it. Maybe he was fixing something. Maybe he dropped something. But then I saw him stop, look over both shoulders, and reach down to place something dark into the hole he'd made. I couldn't tell what it was, but whatever it was, it wasn't small. My heart was pounding as I stared through the blinds, half expecting him to look up and see me. The alert message still glowed on my phone, and my hands were shaking when I typed into the neighborhood watch group chat. This is Jake from 1460. I can confirm movement behind 1462. Looks like he's digging. There was no reply at first, just that awful typing bubble, then a short message remarked, "Our watch captain. Don't approach him. Record if possible. We'll notify local PD." I should have left it at that. I should have just stayed inside, shut the blinds, and waited for morning. But I didn't. Curiosity has a way of feeling stronger than fear when you're staring at something you can't explain. So I slipped on a hoodie, grabbed my phone, and stepped outside. The air was freezing and still, the kind of silence where even a breath sounds too loud. As I walked down the side of my house, the sound of the shovel stopped. And that's when I realized Tom wasn't digging anymore. He was staring right in my direction. The moment my feet hit the grass, I felt that electric kind of tension that only happens when you know you're not supposed to be somewhere. The cold air bit into my skin as I crept along the narrow space between my house and the wooden fence dividing our yards. I didn't dare use my phone flashlight. The moon was doing just enough to paint the world in pale silver. Tom's backyard was quiet now. Too quiet. The rhythmic scrape of metal against dirt had stopped, and the silence felt heavier than before. My pulse was racing in my ears, every breath visible like fog. When I reached the corner of my fence, I crouched low and peeked through a gap between the planks. Tom was standing about 20 feet away, staring right in my direction. His shovel was half buried in the ground beside a mound of fresh dirt. His posture was tense, rigid, like he was listening for something. I froze. My mind was racing with every horror scenario possible. Did he see me? Did he hear me step on something? Seconds felt like minutes. But eventually he turned away, looked down at the hole again, and crouched. He seemed to adjust something inside it, then slowly started to shovel dirt back in. My instinct screamed at me to go back inside. But the logical part of me, the part that always needed to know, wouldn't let me move. I raised my phone, hit record, and zoomed in as much as I could. The camera caught him packing the dirt tight, patting it down with the shovel's flat side, like someone sealing a box. Then, out of nowhere, he froze again. His head turned slightly, and this time there was no mistaking it. He was staring straight at me. I ducked back behind the fence, holding my breath. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and uneven. The shovel clanged against something, metal maybe, and then footsteps started coming closer. The crunch of gravel under his boots sent a shock through my chest. I pressed myself against the wood, praying he'd turn around, praying he'd think it was just a raccoon or the wind. The footsteps stopped. Silence again. Then I heard the squeak of a door hinge, his back door. It slammed shut a second later. I exhaled hard, my whole body shaking. What the hell was he burying out there at 2 a.m? I could still see the faint outline of the disturbed dirt under the moonlight. Every part of me wanted to go check it out, but I knew how insane that would be. If he caught me snooping, there'd be no explaining it. I went back inside, locked the door, and stood in the kitchen for a long time, just staring out at his yard. The glow from my security camera light barely touched his property line, but I could still see that mound of earth. Fresh, uneven, wrong. I uploaded the video to the neighborhood watch chat, but by the time I did, it was almost 3 a.m. Mark saw it first. His response was short. That's not normal. I'm forwarding this to the police contact. That message should have made me feel safer. It didn't, because when I woke up a few hours later, something fell off. The first thing I noticed when I stepped outside was that Tom's yard looked perfectly normal. The grass was undisturbed. No mound, no hole, no dirt, as if nothing had ever happened. I walked to the edge of my driveway, pretending to grab my newspaper just to get a better look. The area he'd been digging in was smooth, like it had been carefully raked over. He'd erased everything. And then, as I was turning back toward my front door, I noticed something sitting on my porch. A small, muddy footprint, barefoot, pressed into concrete right by the doormat. It was facing my door. That's when my phone buzzed again. Another neighborhood watch alert. 1460 Maplewood Drive. Unusual motion detected at 3:47 a.m. That was my house. I never got that alert last night. I stood frozen, the morning sunlight suddenly feeling cold against my skin. Whatever Tom had buried or unburied, he'd been on my property after I went back inside. And I was starting to think the hole wasn't the only thing he'd been hiding. I didn't move for a good minute after that alert popped up. My thumb hovered over the screen, eyes locked on the timestamp. 3:47 a.m. That was an hour after I'd gone back to bed. I didn't remember hearing anything. No creaks, no motion, nothing. And yet my camera had caught something. Someone on my property. I opened the app and clicked on the playback. The footage was grainy, the kind of low-light mess that turns everything into a blur of shapes and shadows. But I could still make out the porch. My porch. And there, just at the edge of the frame, a figure moved, slowly, deliberately. The person wasn't wearing shoes. That same muddy footprint pattern tracked up the steps and stopped right in front of the camera. The figure leaned closer, face just out of view, and for a split second, a hand reached out and covered the lens. Then the screen went black. I felt my stomach twist. Whoever it was had known exactly where the camera was. I sent the clip to Mark, our neighborhood watch coordinator. Within minutes, he called. "Jake, you need to report that," he said. His voice was sharp, the usual calm gone. "That's trespassing, maybe worse. You said this guy was digging something up last night." "Burying something," I corrected. "But yeah, same guy. I'm sure of it." There was a pause. "Tom." "Yeah." Mark exhaled hard. "That guy's been weird since he moved in. But listen, don't do anything dumb, okay? Don't confront him. Let the cops handle it." I agreed, though my gut told me the cops wouldn't do much. They rarely did in cases like this. Suspicious activity in a quiet suburb usually meant paperwork, not action. Still, I sent them everything, video clips, timestamps, even a description of the muddy footprint. By afternoon, a patrol car rolled slowly down the street. I watched from my living room window as an officer knocked on Tom's door. He answered almost immediately, wearing that same blank expression he always had, calm, unreadable. They talked for a few minutes. The officer nodded, wrote something down, and left. That was it. But when I stepped outside later, I noticed Tom standing by his mailbox, watching me, not just glancing, staring. His hands were in his jacket pockets, and he didn't look away even when I met his eyes. I gave a small nod, pretending like nothing was wrong, and walked to my car. As I passed him, he smiled, barely, just a twitch of the corner of his mouth, and said, "Everything okay, Jake?" The way he said my name made my skin crawl. "Yeah," I said, trying to sound casual. "Just a long night." He chuckled softly. "Yeah, long nights can be dangerous around here." I didn't reply. I just got in the car and drove off, pretending I had somewhere to be. My hands were gripping the steering wheel, so tight my knuckles turned white. That evening, I decided I wasn't waiting for anyone else to figure this out. When the sun dipped low and the streetlights flickered on, I grabbed a flashlight, a small garden trowel, and my phone. I was going to see exactly what he'd buried in that yard. I waited until his lights went out, around 10:30, and then crept through the narrow alley between our houses again. The air smelled of wet earth and cut grass. My pulse was pounding, every step sounding too loud in my ears. When I reached the spot where he'd been digging, I crouched low and pressed my hand against the ground. The soil still felt softer than the rest of the yard. I started digging carefully, trying not to make too much noise. After maybe a minute, my trowel hit something solid, wood. I froze, glancing back at his house. Still dark, no movement. My breathing quickened as I brushed away more dirt. The top of a small wooden box emerged, roughly the size of a shoebox, sealed tight with nails along the edges. I hesitated. My brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea, but my hands didn't stop. I wedged the trowel under one corner and pried it up. It came loose with a faint crack of wood, and the smell that hit me was wrong. Damp metallic, like old rust and rot. Inside the box was a bundle wrapped in black plastic. I pulled it halfway out before realizing it was heavier than I expected. My flashlight beam trembled over it, and that's when I saw what looked like hair. Not a lot, just a small patch of dark strands matted together, sticking through a tear in the plastic. I dropped it immediately. The flashlight hit the ground, rolling in the dirt, and I scrambled backward. My heart was hammering so fast, I thought I'd pass out, and then I heard a sound behind me, soft, deliberate footsteps on grass. I whipped around, and my beam caught the faint outline of someone standing near the fence. Tom. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just stood there, his face half-shadowed, shovel in one hand. "What are you doing in my yard, Jake?" he asked quietly. I couldn't find my voice. My throat felt like it had closed up. He took a step forward, then another. The shovel blade glinted under the moonlight. "Didn't your mother ever teach you not to dig in other people's dirt?" he said. His tone was calm, almost friendly, but his eyes were cold. I stumbled back, tripping over a root, landing hard on my side. The flashlight flickered and went out. For a moment, I couldn't see anything but the silhouette of him moving closer. And then headlights. A car turned the corner, its beams sweeping across the yard. Tom froze, glancing toward the street. I didn't wait. I got up and bolted for my back gate, crashing through it, sprinting straight to my house. I didn't stop until I was inside with the door locked and the deadbolt thrown. I stood there, shaking, staring out the kitchen window. Tom's yard was dark again, but I could swear I saw him out there still, standing at the edge of his property, shovel resting on his shoulder, watching my house. Watching me. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that box, the hair, the dirt on Tom's hands, and that stare, like he knew I'd found something I wasn't supposed to. I sat in my living room, lights off, blinds cracked just enough to see his house across the street. He never turned his porch light off that night. Around 3 a.m., I saw a faint figure step out, dragging something across the yard. My gut told me he was reburying it. The next morning, I went straight to the police. Again, I showed them the video from my doorbell camera, told them about the box, the confrontation, everything. The officer, same one as yesterday, took notes, nodded politely, and said he'd look into it. It was clear he didn't believe me. When I got home, I saw Tom outside watering his plants. Like nothing happened. He waved at me. That wave felt like a taunt. For the next 2 days, I tried to stay normal, mow the lawn, pick up the mail, smile at neighbors. But every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. From behind curtains, from parked cars, from Tom's windows. By Friday, I'd had enough. If the cops wouldn't do anything, I would. That night, I set up 2 hidden cameras in my backyard, one facing Tom's fence, another covering my back porch. Then I waited. Hours crawled by. Midnight, 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Nothing. I was just about to give up when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I opened the live feed and froze. Tom was in my backyard. He was standing near the corner fence, flashlight in one hand, shovel in the other. I could see his mouth moving. He was talking to himself. I turned up the volume and barely caught a whisper. Had to move it. Can't let him find again. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. This is Jake Miller. Someone's trespassing in my backyard right now. He's got a shovel. He's the guy I reported. The operator told me to stay inside, stay quiet, and wait for officers. But as I was whispering to her, I heard something downstairs. The creak of the back door. He was inside. My heart nearly stopped. I put the phone down and grabbed the baseball bat from under my bed. The house was dark except for the faint blue glow from my TV downstairs. Every step I took down the hallway felt like walking through molasses, slow, silent, terrified. When I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw him, Tom, standing in my kitchen, flashlight sweeping across the counter. Tom. I shouted before I could stop myself. He turned, startled but calm. Too calm. Jake, you scared me, man, he said, smiling faintly. You left your gate open. I thought I saw something back here. He was lying through his teeth. What are you doing in my house? I asked, bat trembling slightly in my hands. He took a slow step closer. You shouldn't have gone digging where you didn't belong. I tightened my grip. What's in the box, Tom? His eyes narrowed. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. For a long moment, he just stood there, breathing quietly. Then he said something that sent chills down my spine. It wasn't supposed to happen again. Before I could ask what he meant, flashing blue lights flooded the windows. The police. He froze, eyes darting toward the back door. Don't move. I yelled, stepping between him and the exit. But he didn't listen. He bolted, knocking the flashlight to the floor as he ran. I chased him out the back, shouting for the officers. By the time we reached the alley, they had him cornered. He dropped the shovel and raised his hands, muttering something I couldn't make out. They cuffed him, read him his rights, and led him away. As they drove off, one of the officers approached me. We'll need to ask you some questions. You said he buried something? Yeah, in his yard. I saw it. He nodded. We'll send a team to dig it up. I followed them back, standing just outside the police tape as they started digging. My stomach was in knots. Part of me wanted to look away. The other part couldn't. After a few minutes, one of the officers called out. They'd found the box. They lifted it out carefully, set on the grass, and pried the lid open. I held my breath. Inside wasn't what I expected. No human remains. No hair. Just a pile of old, water-damaged photos. Hundreds of them. They looked decades old. Families' barbecues, kids on bikes. Ordinary neighborhood stuff. Except in every single picture, there was one face that never changed. Tom. Different clothes, different people around him, but same face. Same eyes. Same half-smile. The officer frowned, flipping through the photos. These look like they go back to the 80s. Maybe older. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I just stared, trying to process what I was seeing. They took the box as evidence, told me they'd be in touch. Tom was taken to the station for questioning. The whole neighborhood was buzzing by morning. Sirens, flashing lights, neighbors whispering over fences. But later that day, I got a call from Mark, the watch coordinator. His voice was tight. Jake, you might want to sit down for this. They just released Tom. What? Why? They said there wasn't enough to charge him. Just old photos. No crime. I felt the air leave my lungs. That night, I couldn't stop pacing. Couldn't stop checking my cameras, my locks, my windows. Around midnight, I got a message on the watch app. No name, no sender. Just a single photo. It was one of the pictures from that box. A photo of my house. And standing in the driveway was me. I stared at my phone for a full minute before I even realized I'd stopped breathing. The photo on the screen was grainy, taken from an angle that looked like it came from across the street. But there was no mistaking it. My house, my car, my front lawn, and me, standing in the driveway, staring straight at the camera. Except I had never seen that picture before in my life. I zoomed in. The timestamp said it was taken 2 nights ago, the night before I caught Tom digging my backyard. My hands were shaking so bad, I nearly dropped the phone. I went outside, flashlight in hand, scanning the street. Everything looked normal, quiet, calm, not a soul in sight. But every shadow looked alive. Every window felt like an eye staring back. I went back inside and locked every door, double-checked every window. My cameras were still recording, but that didn't make me feel safer. In fact, it made me feel worse. Because if someone had taken that picture of me, it meant they were close enough to be watching. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, lights off, watching the live camera feeds on my phone. My neighborhood, usually so peaceful, so quiet, felt different now. It felt like something underneath all the suburban calm had cracked open. Around 3:14 a.m., one of my cameras glitched. Just a half-second static flicker. When the feed came back, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a figure standing at the edge of my driveway. They weren't moving, just standing there, staring toward the house. The infrared lens made the image ghostly white. I couldn't make out the face. But the shape, the build, it looked like Tom. I hit record and zoomed in, whispering under my breath, "You gotta be kidding me." Then, just like that, the figure turned and walked away. Not ran, just walked. Calm, confident. I called the police again, even though I knew what they'd say. When the patrol car finally arrived, the officer took one look at the footage and frowned. "There's no one out there now, sir. We checked the street." "Yeah, but he was just here. Look." I shoved my phone toward him, replaying the clip. The officer sighed. "Mr. Miller, you might want to take a break from this stuff. Get some rest. You've had a rough week." I wanted to scream, but I just nodded and let him leave. After he drove off, I sat there staring at my front door for what felt like hours. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe the sleepless nights were catching up to me. But then I remembered the photos. The ones in that box. Tom hadn't aged in any of them. And if the police had really let him go, that meant he was somewhere out there. The next day, I decided to dig deeper myself. I went online, searched for property records, neighborhood archives, anything I could find about Tom. His full name was Thomas K. Rowe. I found old utility records going back 20 years, same address. But before that, nothing. No birth record. No driver's license older than that. It was like he'd appeared out of nowhere around 2003. Then I found something strange. In the HOA archives, old scan newsletters and neighborhood watch bulletins, there was a picture from 1995 of the very same house. And standing beside it was a man who looked exactly like Tom. Same eyes, same jawline, just younger. I felt a chill creep up my spine. I clicked through more archives, newsletters from the 80s, the 70s, community barbecues, holiday events, block parties. And in nearly every photo, somewhere in the background, there he was, always watching. I didn't know what to think. A twin? A son? A prank? None of it made sense. That evening, I printed a few of those old photos and drove to the station. The officer at the desk barely looked up when I walked in. "I need to speak with Detective Harris. It's about Tom Rowe." He sighed. "Mr. Miller, we already told you." I cut him off. "This isn't about the box. Look at these." I laid out the photos. He's in all of them, going back 50 years. Doesn't look any older. You see what I'm saying? The officer stared at them, eyebrows raised. Could be a coincidence. Coincidence? The same guy? In every picture? He leaned in closer, his tone softening a little. I'll pass them along to the detective, okay?" I could tell by his tone he didn't believe me. I left, frustrated but also determined. I wasn't crazy. Something was happening here. Something no one wanted to see. That night, I decided to do one more thing. Something stupid, maybe dangerous. But I had to know. I waited until midnight, when the street was quiet and everyone's lights were out. Then I slipped out the back door, crossed through the alley, and cut through Tom's yard. Police tape still hung from his fence, fluttering in the wind. I ducked under it, flashlight off, using only the moonlight to see. The patch of dirt where they dug up the box was still loose. But right next to it was a fresh mound, like someone had buried something else. My heart started racing. I knelt down and brushed some of the dirt away with my hands. It was soft, recently turned. I kept digging until my fingers hit something hard, metal. I hesitated for a second, then dug faster. When I cleared enough dirt, I saw it. Another box, smaller than the first one. I lifted it out and wiped the dirt away. No lock this time, just a simple latch. I opened it slowly, my flashlight trembling in my hand. Inside was a single photograph. It was my house again, but this one was different. In the window of my living room, through the half-drawn curtains, I could see myself, sitting on the couch, staring at my phone. And the timestamp? 10 minutes ago. I dropped the photo like it burned me. My breath came in short, shallow bursts, and for a moment, I genuinely thought I was going to pass out. I looked around, scanning every window, every fence line, every shadow. Someone had taken that picture minutes ago, which meant someone was watching me right now. I turned off my flashlight, crouched low, and tried to calm my breathing. My brain was screaming at me to run, to call someone, to just get out of there. But my curiosity, or maybe my stupidity, kept me frozen in place. That's when I heard it. A soft crunch of gravel behind me. I spun around, and my flashlight clicked back on by instinct. The beam hit a figure standing maybe 15 feet away, half hidden by the bushes. It was Tom. Or at least, it looked like him. His skin was pale, his eyes hollow, his clothes dirty. The same clothes he'd been wearing the night they arrested him. But his expression wasn't angry. It was blank, like he was sleepwalking. "Tom." I managed to whisper, my voice shaking. He didn't answer. He just tilted his head slightly, like a dog hearing a strange sound, and took one step forward. That's when I noticed something else. Behind him, deeper in the yard, were faint lights, flickering orange, like candles. I turned my light that way, and my stomach twisted. There were more boxes, dozens of them, all half buried, some open, some sealed. And beside them, small wooden signs with dates carved into them. The newest one, that day's date. I took a step back, whispering, "What the hell is this?" Tom finally spoke, but his voice didn't sound like I remembered. It was softer, distant, almost rehearsed. "They don't stay buried long," he said. I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He blinked slowly. "The watch keeps records. You found one of them. You weren't supposed to." "The watch?" I repeated. He nodded slightly, pointing a trembling finger toward me. "Now they'll come for you, too." Before I could respond, he turned and started walking toward the woods behind his house, slow, deliberate steps, like a puppet being pulled by strings. I shouted after him, but he didn't look back. I wanted to follow, but fear kept me rooted to the spot. I picked up the photo again, my photo, and stuffed it into my jacket pocket before sprinting back home. By the time I made it to my front door, I was drenched in sweat. I locked myself in, checked every room, and then sat in the dark living room with my phone in hand. The first thing I did was check the camera feeds. And I swear to God, the same flicker from before appeared again. Static. Then the feed from my front yard returned. Except this time, there was a new figure standing near the mailbox. Not Tom. Someone taller, dressed in dark clothing, wearing what looked like a reflective vest. It took me a second to realize what it was. A neighborhood watch vest. The person stood there for maybe 5 seconds, completely still, before walking off into the darkness. I scrolled through the previous night's footage, my fingers shaking. Every night, around the same time. That same flicker appeared in the feed, always followed by the figure in the vest, standing somewhere near my house, watching. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop. The original message, the one that started all this, came from a Neighborhood Watch app. But when I checked my notifications history, the message was gone, not archived, not deleted, just gone. I opened the app again, scrolling through the contact list. But there was no Neighborhood Watch officer named Mark, no alert history, no record of that message ever being sent. It was like it never existed. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. A new message appeared on the screen. You were warned not to dig, Daniel. My heart pounded. I looked out the window, scanning the street. Empty. I typed back, hands trembling. Who is this? No reply. Another buzz. Return the photo to the ground. Tonight, I backed away from the window, every nerve in my body screaming to leave the house. But something in me snapped, anger, maybe defiance. I typed one more message. I'm done playing your games. And then I turned off my phone. For the next few hours, I sat in silence. I don't even remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the curtains. For a moment, I almost believed it had been some insane dream, until I checked my front yard. Right where my mailbox stood, the grass was torn up, fresh dirt, a hole, and sitting neatly on top of it was a photograph I'd taken from a box. Only now, there was something new drawn on it in red ink, a circle, around my face, and 3 words written underneath it. You're being watched. I parked my car a few houses down from Mr. Keen's property and turned off the headlights. The night was darker than usual, almost like the sky itself was holding its breath. My heart was pounding as I sat there, watching. The place looked ordinary. Porch light on, mailbox slightly crooked, the faint glow of a TV flickering through the curtains. But deep down I knew something was off. At around 11:45 p.m., I saw a movement. Mr. Keen stepped out from his backyard, holding a small lantern. He looked both ways before heading down the side of the house, dragging something wrapped in a tarp. I couldn't make out what it was, but it scraped softly against the concrete as he moved. I ducked lower in my seat, barely breathing. I thought about calling the police right then, but a part of me hesitated. What if I was wrong? What if it was just some weird late-night project or garden work? But who does that at midnight in the dark? I decided to follow him again. Slowly, I opened my car door, careful not to make a sound. The air was cold and heavy, the kind of air that clings to your skin. I kept my distance, using the trees and shadows as cover. He crossed the street, cut through an empty lot, and headed toward the woods that separated our block from the next neighborhood. And arrived at the next spot, I whispered under my breath, trying to steady my nerves. That next spot was a small clearing behind the abandoned shed, the same place I had found the disturbed soil the previous night. I felt a chill run through me as I realized he was heading there again. I crouched behind a large oak tree and peeked around it. Mr. Keen set the lantern on the ground, revealing his face. He looked exhausted, pale, and tense. He pulled out a small shovel from inside the tarp and began digging right next to the same spot he had buried something before. Each sound of the shovel hitting the dirt echoed through the still night. I took out my phone and started recording. The faint sound of crickets mixed with the dull thuds of metal on soil. My hands were trembling. After a few minutes, he stopped digging and unwrapped the tarp. My stomach dropped. It wasn't what I thought it would be. Inside wasn't a body, or at least not a human one. It was a box, a large, old wooden box covered in mold and mud. He opened it slightly, and I caught a glimpse of what looked like old papers, a few plastic bags, and something metallic reflecting the lantern light. Then, out of nowhere, I heard the crunch of twigs behind me. I froze. Slowly, I turned my head, and my heart almost stopped. It was Officer Burns, the same cop who came earlier that week after I'd filed the Neighborhood Watch report. He put a finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet. I nodded, though I was still trying to process what was happening. The officer whispered, "Stay here," and stepped forward toward the clearing, flashlight in hand. "Evening, Mr. Keen." Burns said, his voice calm but firm. Mr. Keene froze mid-dig, his eyes wide. "Officer, I can explain." "Then go ahead," Burns replied, slowly approaching him. I stayed hidden but leaned forward just enough to see. Mr. Keene started rambling, saying something about old documents, personal property, and keeping the past safe. But the officer wasn't buying it. He motioned for him to step aside and peered into the hole. When Burns lifted the box lid, his face changed. Not shock, something else. Recognition. He glanced at Mr. Keene, then quickly looked over his shoulder, as if checking if anyone else was watching. That's when I realized something wasn't right. The officer knelt down and whispered something to Keene. Keene nodded. Then, unbelievably, Burns began helping him cover the box back up. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My phone was still recording, and every instinct told me to get out of there before they spotted me. I took a slow step backward, then another, but my foot snapped a small twig under me. Both heads turned in my direction instantly. "Who's there?" Burns shouted, shining his flashlight straight into the trees. The beam landed right on me. I ran. Branches slapped my face and roots snagged my shoes, but I kept running until I reached the street. Behind me, I heard yelling. Two voices, one angry, one panicked, but I didn't look back. I sprinted to my car, jumped in, and slammed the door shut. My breathing was ragged as I started the engine and tore down the road. When I finally reached my house, I locked every door and window. My hands were still shaking as I watched the footage I'd captured. It was blurry, but clear enough to see both of them. Keene and Officer Burns standing over that buried box together. The next morning, I tried calling the station, but they told me Officer Burns was out on leave. No one could tell me why. And Mr. Keene's house? Empty. No car in the driveway. Blinds shut. Mailbox overflowing. It's been 2 days now, and I haven't slept properly. Every sound outside makes me jump. Last night, I found a note taped to my front door. No name, no signature. Just a few words written in shaky handwriting. Stop digging. Some things are better left buried. I don't know who left it, Keene, Burns, or someone else entirely. But one thing for sure, whatever's in that box, it wasn't meant to be found. I didn't leave my house for the next 2 days. I barely even opened the blinds. Every creak in the floorboards made me jump. Every car that slowed down outside sent a chill down my spine. That note on my door replayed in my head over and over again. Stop digging. The words felt heavier the more I thought about them. I considered taking the footage straight to another police station, maybe even the news, but something stopped me every time. What if they were all connected somehow? What if the moment I tried to share that video, someone came knocking to make sure I never spoke again? Still, I couldn't just sit there. So the next morning, I drove back to that clearing in broad daylight. The air smelled damp from the rain the night before, and the ground was softer, darker. I half expected to find police tape or signs of fresh digging, but everything looked untouched, like none of it ever happened, except one thing. Right in the center of the clearing, where the box had been buried, there was now a wooden stake in the ground. On top of it was a small hand-carved sign. It read, "Private property, no trespassing." And nailed just below it was something that made my blood run cold. It was a photograph of me, standing at my window, taken from outside my house. That's when I realized they knew. They'd been watching me, too. I stumbled back, heart pounding, scanning the tree line like someone would jump out at any second. But there was nothing, just the silence of the woods and the faint rustle of leaves. I turned and ran back to my car, every instinct screaming at me to get out of there. When I got home, I packed a small bag, just essentials, my phone, my wallet, and the flash drive with the video. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that neighborhood any longer. Before leaving, I glanced at my front porch camera feed, and there, clear as day, was a shadowed figure standing by my fence. It wasn't Mr. Keene. It wasn't Officer Burns. This one was taller, broader, watching. I shut the laptop and walked out the door without looking back. I've been staying in Motel 2 Towns over for the last week, and I keep my phone off most of the time. But sometimes, late at night, I get this weird feeling like I'm being watched again. like someone followed me here. Maybe I shouldn't have ignored that note. Maybe I really should have stopped digging. But you know what? Curiosity doesn't just go away, especially when you know there's a truth buried somewhere out there that people are willing to protect at any cost. So maybe, just maybe, I'll go back one last time. And if I don't make it back to post again, you'll know the Neighborhood Watch was right all along. If you're still watching this and you think this story's insane, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, what's coming next is even darker.